Good evening and welcome to a new edition of To The Point. Within a few weeks, Egyptian President Abdel Fattah al-Sisi will be traveling to Washington, D.C. Worth noting, he is traveling based on an invitation that was issued from his American counterpart, President Donald Trump. And the question that raises itself right now, after 13 years of absence of Egyptian political leadership in Washington, D.C., what will be the shape and format of the visit? With us this evening on the phone to discuss this issue, or to shed light on the issue, is Mr. Atif Abdel Gawad, a political analyst based in Washington, D.C. Mr. Abdel Gawad, can you hear us?
Yes, I can hear you. Go ahead.
Sir, it's been 13 years since an Egyptian president went to the United States. How do you expect the visit, the timing, and more importantly, what do you expect the agenda to be?
Well, it's very important, as you have just indicated. It's been a long time since an Egyptian president ever visited the White House. So that by itself is very significant. The timing is also significant because, as you know, the visit by President Sisi to Washington, President Sisi will be among the first few heads of state to ever visit the Trump administration. Only a few European and close allies have already visited Washington, and then President Sisi. So that's by itself is an indication of how of the importance that the Trump administration assigns to its relationship with Egypt. Mm-hmm. As far as the agenda is concerned, I can just quickly say that there are three focal points for the agenda. One, most important, is the bilateral relationship between the U.S. and Egypt. As you know, Egypt seeks more economic assistance. It seeks more investment on top of the agenda. There are two other focal points. One is the fight against terrorism, and the Trump administration has already acknowledged the importance, the contribution of Egypt in that regard. So there will be a lot of discussion about coordination, about new means, about how to enhance the fight against terrorism, not just in Sinai, not just in Egypt, but elsewhere in the Middle East. And the third and final focal point will be how to revive the Middle East peace talks between Israel and the Palestinians. And as we already know, Egypt has always maintained a great degree of credibility to either party of the talks, both Israel and the Palestinians. And Egypt this time will also be an integral part of those talks.
Mm-hmm. Do you think the relations between the United States and Egypt have somewhat been cold with the last administration? Do you think that with the new American administration and President Sisi's visit that maybe we can start a new phase of warming of relations?
Yes, but let me say that, yes, it is true that the relationship has been cooling down over the past 4 years because there were developments in Egypt, as we all know, and those developments, the uprising that followed, the removal of the Muslim Brotherhood regime, and the way it was done. So it was perceived by the U.S., or at least some of in the U.S. here, that it looked not perfectly what the U.S. would be seeking. But even during the Obama administration, the relationship has taken large strides toward normalization. As we know, full economic assistance was restored during the Obama administration. The Obama administration never used the term coup to describe the removal of the Muslim Brotherhood. And so, yes, there was a cooling down of the relationship, but it also it was restored gradually but immediately. And I think, as you just mentioned, now that Mr. Trump is there, Mr. Trump's priority is to fight terrorism, and he finds in Egypt
Yes.
a wonderful partner.
Do you think that we will see eye to eye, or more importantly, will the Trump administration categorize the Muslim Brotherhood as a terrorist group?
It is a matter of the day. It's not just up to one individual in the Trump administration. Obviously, Mr. Trump and his administration will listen carefully to what Mr. Sisi will have to present to them, facts and history. But it is not just that easy, because it involves the U.S. Congress. It involves the State Department. The State Department would have to come up with concrete evidence to persuade the Congress, the U.S. Congress, and whether or not the State Department will be able to come up with compelling evidence. And remember that when the U.S. assigns a group as a terrorist group, there are criteria, there are certain elements that have to be satisfied, and whether or not those elements apply to the Muslim Brotherhood, we'll have to wait and see.
You had mentioned that there are lots of regional issues to be discussed, like the Palestinian question. Do you think the meeting will lead to some kind of a strategy and a way out of the boiling points in Syria, Libya, Iraq, and the Palestinian questions, amongst other issues?
Yes, and the good news is that there is overlapping of views between Mr. Sisi and Mr. Trump, even before the discussion starts. On Syria and Libya, both men actually believe that the status quo in some countries may be much better than the alternative. Like, to take, for example, the situation in Syria. Some people were calling for the removal of President Assad. And so the question becomes, okay, so if we remove President Assad, who will come? What is the alternative? So both men believe that the alternative is even worse, not just for Syria, but for the entire region. The same situation is repeated in Libya, in other places. So right now, you will find that both Egypt and the U.S. believe that there should not be a change of regime in places of instability. So they would rather wait and see a sort of an organized, peaceful political transition rather than fighting and the spread of terrorism.
The image of Egypt is an issue of concern as well, and it's an issue that affects investment and public opinion. Do you think rectify the negative stereotypes? And one of the main tools in the United States for the dissemination of information is usually the media, and it doesn't seem like Trump is on a honeymoon phase with most of the media.
Well, we must first recognize that things in the U.S. are different from in Egypt, from what they are in Egypt. So therefore, the government here in the U.S. doesn't have any influence over what the media says or writes or displays. So this is absolutely a matter of the media by itself. And also, in that context, I would like to say that it is absolutely important to enhance exchanges of visits on several levels between Egypt and the U.S. So one level is, of course, congressional levels. There have to be more visits by members of Egypt's parliament and also members of the U.S. Congress. So that's one. Also, Egypt should seek to invite leaders of U.S. media, writers, journalists, reporters, and that would give them the opportunity to see things for what they are, not for what they think they are. So, but it's a process, and we have to accept that cultural differences also play a role here. We have to be a little bit more patient.
Before we wrap up, maybe I'd like to ask you about, was there any coverage about the President's upcoming visit to the United States? Was there anything in the media in reference to Trump's invitation?
No, not really, because this, I think, coverage will start the minute the President is here. And it's traditional in the U.S. media. There are a lot of other things that are so much more important for the U.S. reader or more the U.S. citizen here. And so they don't really, shed much light on foreign events. This is obviously a foreign affair event. Until the President is here, until Mr. Sisi is actually meeting Mr. Trump or meeting members of the U.S. Congress, then we will see extensive coverage. And, of course, there will be an increased importance, attention to the visit because of the changes Mr. Trump is seeking, not just in his relationship with Egypt, but all over the Middle East.
Mm-hmm. Sir, I'm sorry, a final question that just came to mind, and that is with regards to involvement in this region. Will we see more American boots in troubled areas in this region, or will Trump's policy be different?
Will we see what American
more boots, more military presence?
No. But what we would see is a continuation of the Obama practice to use the special forces. Americans, I think, will never again send troops, traditional ground troops, the way it has always done in the past. I think America increasingly will depend on two tools. One is special operation, like the ones we have already seen in Yemen. The operations we are already seeing in Iraq, helping the Iraqi fight ISIL. And also the other tool, I think, will be the continuation of the use of the drones, so-called drones, those aircraft that don't have a pilot.
Mr. Atif Abdelgawad, political analyst from Washington, D.C., we thank you very much for your fruitful input. Stay tuned to a special edition of To The Point, and President Abdel Fattah al-Sisi, after 3 years of absence, is heading to Washington, D.C. within a few weeks. We'll be right back with our continued coverage, so please stay with us.
Be the first to know. The news live at the site of the event. Information on events as they are happening. If it's breaking news, it's Nile TV. For ads on Nile TV, Egyptian Radio and Television Union, the economic sector, info@nileinternational.net, or call us on the following numbers.
Good evening. With continuing our coverage with the President's upcoming visit to the United States, with us on the line is Ambassador Mohammed Higazi, former Assistant Foreign Minister. Your Excellency, can you hear us?
Yes, of course, Dina.
Good evening, sir. And maybe before I go into the President's upcoming visit, I will have to capitalize on your hat as a former ambassador to Germany and ask you, how do you see the Chancellor's visit to Egypt? Angela Merkel just left a few days ago. How do you evaluate the visit?
I think it is a very important visit that came in a time where the region is facing a lot of challenges, that both leaders have shared opinion and exchanged views on how better to move forward in their bilateral relations, where they have attended the inauguration of 3 electricity power generation, and it will add to Egypt's general power grid ability 14.4 giga in terms of electricity. This is very important amount, which is more or less like half of the current electricity production. This will avail to the local market as well as to the investment community, and a chance to further invest in Egypt. The second, I think, most important issues that were on the table was the illegal migration, where Germany have taken a very maybe a moral and political stand. The Chancellor have accepted to host 2 million refugees coming from Syria and elsewhere. So Egypt as a transit point, and Tunisia as well, where the 2 countries that the Chancellor have decided to talk to about this trade, Europe, Germany, and the Mediterranean countries, can help to stop the influx of refugees towards Europe. And I think Egypt has expressed clearly its position during this visit and before, that illegal migration will require a sustainable approach, contains the illegal migration will require investments, will require creating economic chances for the youth in order to prevent them from crossing the Mediterranean towards Europe. I think the Egyptian comprehensive approach, which contains also to support the technically the logistics and the exchange of information about the phenomena, as well as aiding Egypt and the transit country by equipment and exchange of experiences and discussion over the phenomena on a regular basis, is the only approach that will sustain the confrontation against the phenomena. The third and most important part, Dina, of the discussion was the way to confront terrorism. And I think the Egyptian approach to this has proven successful, not only militarily and security-wise, but also from an economic point of view. And this is where Germany and its support to the Egyptian economy is required, as well as the other European countries. Third point is the ideological confrontation. And here let me note, Dina, the important meeting the Chancellor have asked to make with the Grand Imam of Al-Azhar and the Bob Tawadros II. Both religious leaders have at play in the ideological confrontation, which we think is very important. The fourth point of the discussion, and is related also to terrorism and migration, is settling the disputes in this war-torn region in Syria, in Iraq, in Yemen, in Libya, where the Chancellor have commended highly the Egyptian political initiatives towards, along with the neighboring countries of Libya, Tunisia, and Algeria, to establish a peaceful approach, an inclusive approach that will lead Libya to settle. Otherwise, the migration issue, the influx of refugees will remain as a threat to the European stability and economic burden, of course, besides the humanitarian catastrophe it imposes to the Middle East. Those are, I think, the bilateral terrorism and illegal migration is among the many important issues that has been discussed. But let me note also that the visit to the Grand Imam and the 2 institutions, the Muslim reference of Al-Azhar and the Coptic Church, is very important in the confrontation that we are facing now to terrorism. She visited also the pyramids, And
Yes.
this is another message that has been widely received in Germany, particularly that today is the inauguration of the ITB, the German famous Berlin Bourse of Tourism, where thousands of companies are contracting, and I think Egypt as a destination is very welcomed. The visit of the Chancellor have came on a very right time, sending a very important image to German tourism. Hopefully, we return back to the figures of 2010, which was around over 1 million German tourists visited Egypt. Now we are heading to 650 per year, a German tourism that is picking up, which will send also another needed message to the Russian and the British market, where nothing really worries the Britons that is not in Germany. Germany has came really to support Egypt in this very important field, and time has come to Russia and Britain to follow suit.
Sir, moving to the President's upcoming visit to Washington, D.C., and maybe one of the questions here that are important to raise, and that is, will this be a breakthrough in relations? Because we really cannot hide behind the bush and say that relations were up to par between Egypt and the United States as of late.
Indications, Dina, is saying so. The approach also of this administration towards terrorism is very important. As I was talking in the previous question about the comprehensive Egyptian approach to confront terrorism, I referred to settling disputes. And among the disputes, which is, I think you have discussed with your earlier speaker, the Palestinian question. I think Egypt will introduce its vision. Particularly, it will couple with the Arab ministerial meetings and maybe the Arab summit, and will reflect on how best we should approach the Palestinian cause on a time where the right-wing government in Israel are truly posing a very heavy-handed in the territory, particularly in Jerusalem. Definitely, the president will reflect on the call for transfer of embassies to East Jerusalem. And I believe that the president will talk Syria and also will refer to Libya. And I'm sure that the Egyptian diplomacy, which is very much in the forefront against terrorism, will be highly listened to and received in Washington. I would say also that the bilateral relations will take an important part of the discussion, where I think returning back to the economic support and the military coordination, as well as joint effort to settle the disputes, listening to Egypt is very important, and the bilateral summit between the two presidents, where a lot of affection has been reflected since the meeting between the president and the then candidate Donald Trump, now the president-elect, is very important. And I think we will capital on this very important meeting to move forward our bilateral ties in all dimensions. I think this is a deep-rooted strategic partnership where I think America, among the many ways to solve issues, is to listen to its regional partners, and Egypt has proven to be very wise in all the approaches towards conflicts in the region, where we have supported the nation state to bring about peace and stability in our country and in our region and in the neighborhood. I think those who have helped terrorism, those who have used terrorism to achieve political goals, have failed, and they render the Middle East into this chaos where a humanitarian catastrophe is living among us. You can take only, Dina, the Syrian example, and to note that out of 26 million Syrians, 13 million out of them have suffered this horrific conflict, where 7 million are displaced, 5 million immigrants, and 450,000 to 750,000 killed in this conflict. Add to that the situation in Libya, and Yemen. No region, Dina, in the world are facing this situation but the Middle East, and time has come that we all, regional powers as well as international partners, work together, and Washington are very capable indeed to produce and introduce solutions to many of those conflicts.
Do you think the issue of military aid will be raised in this meeting? Worth noting, military aid to Egypt has not moved a penny or a dollar since the Camp David agreement. Will this be surfacing in this meeting?
I think this is a mutual beneficial file where Americans have, used this partnership to achieve their training, and I think the visit last week of the Central Command Director to Egypt is in itself a reflection of the preparation towards returning back. As I always say in our military cooperation, as I always say, Dina, if you want to invest in the stability of the region, you need to invest in the Egyptian army. It is the army that is now facing, along with our police, facing terrorism on behalf, I think, not only of Europe, but the world community and the regional countries where I think stability is needed. And if Egypt succeeded in its fight against terrorism, it is success to all our neighborhood, including Europe and the United States. So assisting Egypt militarily, it is in very much favor of the United States and our European partners. So my answer is absolutely yes. It will be very important to return back to the previous cooperation in this very important field, where you will render stability through counting on the largest and most important players in the Middle East, which is Egypt and its armed forces.
Do you think President Trump's position vis-à-vis economic cooperation and that charity has to start at home, will this hamper him progressing with bilateral economic agreements, or what?
No, I think, as I always use the term comprehensive approach to terrorism, comprehensive approach to face illegal migration. I use the term economic dimension. The support that Egypt will get from its partners in Europe and the United States will help our economy, will assist us confronting our challenges, and it will help stabilize the Middle East. So when you support Egypt in terms of economic and investment level, you first gain because Egypt is a very attractive investment destination. When you stabilize the economy, you have also to see what Egypt has already taken as a unilateral decision to follow the IMF program to restructure its economies, meaning that we have paid our dues and we have carried our responsibilities, and our partners should not refrain from coming forward to support our drive toward restructuring our economy. And if 92 millions in the southern Mediterranean are successful, it is for the good of Europe and the United States. So you can see the United States have contributed also, as well as Europe, including Chancellor Merkel, announcement of 250 million coupled with another 250 million in 2018 to cover the gap in the financial requirement of the application of the program. The United States also are supporting this restructuring, and I think not only through bilateral means, but also through supporting Egypt in the financial and institutional organization like the IMF or the World Bank and others. So I think it is one of the most important parts of our discussion with the United States is to continue their economic support, military support will render also beneficial to both parties.
Your Excellency, Ambassador Mohammed Hijazi, former Assistant Foreign Minister, thank you very much for your fruitful input. And we continue with special edition of To the Point. And the President, after 13 years of absence of warm relations, to put it diplomatically, is heading to Washington in a few weeks. We'll continue our coverage right after this, so please stay with us. Welcome back. With us on the line is Dr. Passant Fahmy, member of the Egyptian Parliament. Dr. Passant, can you hear us?
Yes, I can hear you.
Dr. Passant, we seem to be having quite an extensive foreign relations activity, so to speak. We've had the German Chancellor in Egypt, the head of the Russian Duma, and now President Sisi will be, amongst others, and President Sisi will be traveling to Washington in a few weeks. How do you see this move, and how is it helping the Egyptian economy, quite frankly?
Well, I can see, in all honesty, if you look at the map, geographic map, and you look at the region, I do not think that there's a place in this area better than Egypt for future investment. In all aspects, you can name it, in all aspects. Look down, Egypt is the center. It has a lot of advantages, not only the location, the geographic location, but we have a proper plan. We have a future where we want to develop. We have very large size of population, youth in young population. We have wealth left and right. We want to grow agriculture. We want to grow fishing. We have mining, oil, you name it. So when you look and you even go through all the reports which have been issued recently by several international institutions, it is clear that Egypt will become, before the year 2030, one of the largest 20 economies on earth. And in the short run as well, it is number one in the region and comes after the Emirates or Dubai. And we are number one and they can number two. So when you look at the region, you can go nowhere else. Africa is not yet stable. Iraq, Syria, and this area is, like you see, boiling. Left is Libya in fire. If you talk about Tunisia and Morocco, they are small economies compared to us. So I think everybody now realizes that Egypt is a place where investment would be very attractive, subject to some changes required in the environment for investment and developing some laws. And we have noticed that from the several visits, as you come and mentioned, for instance, Germany. This is a very strong partner in Europe, and Germany is a very strong international economy. And they inaugurated with us large projects, and those projects are extremely important for the infrastructure, for the economy. And they talked about other projects as well. When you look at the corridor of Canada, Suez Canal, again, this is another part. Coming is the British Prime Minister, and other visits will come as well. The President is supposed to be in the United States in a few weeks. So I think it is clear now that a lot of attention is given to Egypt, that it will be, inshallah, the most attractive part and point in the Middle East for future investment and future development of the economy. The world economy is suffering as well. And I think our major partner, which is Europe, have interest that this area would stabilize, and it has been mentioned as well by President Trump in his first speech. We need to stabilize this area. We need to finish with the issue of terrorism so that we could really invest the wealth available in the Middle East and Africa. So the fight even on terrorism has been decided. And I think in the coming few months, we will see major changes on the ground, whether would it be in Syria, in Iraq, and in other parts.
Dr. Passant, a number of issues that Egypt raised in the past, for example, like a free trade zone with the United States, and those issues have sort of been shelved. Do you think this can materialize, taking into account that you have a president with a different concept in the White House now, and he is sort of a very business-oriented kind of president?
Not immediately. Because, again, if you want to talk about free trade, you need to be ready in the business environment locally for that type of agreements. We still have a lot of steps to take. For instance, up till now, we cannot come up with an agreement on the final form of the investment law. We did not yet talk about the law for mergers and acquisitions. We did not talk about the law of companies when they want to leave the area and go out. How do you call it? قانون الإفلاس. I can't find the word. If a company would like to quit and they want to declare bankruptcy.
Bankruptcy and liquidate their whatever assets they have.
We don't have enough, we're not yet prepared for that type of agreement, because a free trade agreement requires some conditions in the market. So I think, yes, it could be discussed. It has been discussed for ages. But we need to be ready to ask that type of questions, to put that request in place, and I think eventually it will come. But I think we have a homework to do locally before we really before we can really expect that this could materialize quickly.
Will we see a visit soon by members of the Egyptian parliament to the United States? We had a congressional delegation. Are we going to pay back a visit?
Well, it could happen. It's not yet decided, but definitely it should happen. Because when you meet, you go there, you explain, they come here and see on the ground. And it's very good to have reciprocal visits. And I think as well that the Ministry of Foreign Affairs is doing an excellent job with that regard. We have seen the minister traveling all left and right and making a great effort, whether on the political scene and eventually, of course, on the economic scene. So I think, yes, we could have some visits arranged. But I don't think that this is a priority at the present time.
What about U.S. aid? What is the view on that issue?
If you want to have aid, you have to be ready for that. The U.S. aid is not given for free. The U.S. aid is given for specific reasons and for specific objectives. They've been helping us, it is true, no doubt, but the bulk came after the Camp David Accord. So I think I would prefer, in all honesty, that this aid will come into the form of technological assistance. For instance, we need to develop agriculture. We want to grow 4 million feddans. The United States is one of the largest countries on earth in the agriculture technology advancements. So our cooperation between us and the United States in the agriculture field and what we can manufacture on. Again, we would like to see assistance as well in the fishing field, the mining, the banking. And I would be very happy to see one of the large American banks coming to the market. And this, if it happens, I think, in my personal opinion, will have a great impact as well on the market. So cooperation, I would prefer not to talk about aid, but we would prefer, and even this aid is given in the form of technical assistance in the fields I've just mentioned.
Are you optimistic, to wrap up, about this visit and the outcome? Do you think there could be something really positive that the president could be coming back with from this visit to Washington?
Definitely. President Trump as well is open for Egypt, and he mentioned this several times. He said that he will fight terrorism for us, and this is a major issue which should make everybody optimistic. Because if you could finish with terrorism, the ground will be paved for a future economic growth.
Does that mean he will recognize the Brotherhood as a terrorist group?
Excuse me?
Does that mean he will recognize the Brotherhood as a terrorist group?
I don't know the approach taken by the United States. They have their own calculations, but what I care for is that the terrorists stop operating on our grounds in the region so that we could really go into an economic growth. But the other issue, I don't know how they would handle it. But the major thing is that we want to stop feeling that we cannot continue fighting forever. Yes. We cannot be in war up till another 10 years. This is killing for the economy, for the people, for everything. And yes, when President Trump came to power, he mentioned clearly I want to finish with the issue of terrorism so that we can really use the wealth of Earth for the benefit of everybody.
Dr. Bassant Fahmy, member of the Egyptian Parliament, thank you very much for your fruitful input. And with that, we end this edition of To The Point. Would like to thank you, the viewers. Wish you a very pleasant evening, and we'll see you same time next week. Until then, good night.